The Bishop, I just want to recap on what has been happening in the past 7 days, just to let the Methodist people remember, Uguti, on Sunday you launched the program of the women for the Women's Month, where you then directed what is supposed to be done. We are then taking that program forward, Bantu Base Weseli. That was the particular items Bishop had said when he spoke to us on that particular day, that instead of celebrating, let us then take this month and make it a month of prayer with particular items that we're supposed to be praying for. One of them is the topic that we are about today, which is the gender-based violence. And the others, of course, is to pray for our country and pray for the people of Eswatini, and also ask God to raise intercessors, and of course, and also pray for the conference of the Methodist Church of Southern Africa that is going to be taking place next month. So those are the key issues that the Bishop of the Highveld and Eswatini, when she started the program, she requested Abu Mama to take through Bazalwan. So today, I just want to do the ground rules of what we're supposed to be doing. As you join, please be so kind and just mute yourself and close your video, so that then the proceedings are not disturbed. We are asking you, what will also happen after our guest speaker speaks, we are then going to be asking you to use, there's an icon on your screen that is written reactions. If you look at that icon, it will show you, it does have a hand. If you want to ask a question, you just lift up your hand and then we will recognize you. But also you are allowed to go to the chats and put on your comments and all questions. We will then take those and read them out. And the guest speaker of the day will also then be responding to those items that you would probably be having after he speaks. Bishop, I just want to, as we are going on Monday, it will be the Women's Day, and just to remind the Methodist people and all women of the Methodist Church what the presiding bishop, Umama Umalinga, has said message yakhe as she greets and wishes the women of the Methodist Church a good and a great Women's Day. One of the things that you are saying in that message is that one of the many challenges that women face today is gender-based violence, and this is what we are about today, and femicide. The grim statistics suggest that we have reached pandemic levels of women abuse in South Africa. Isn't that so scary? A nation where girls are not safe, where women are not safe in their own homes and at work and in public areas. And the presiding bishop also says the church in general and the Methodist Church of Southern Africa in particular can no longer deny its contribution and participation, whether overt or covert, in gender-based violence and entrenchment of patriarchy, which degrades women, turning them into objects. This is the message that has been written to all women as the presiding bishop, the head of this church, is wishing the women of the Methodist Church a great month and a great Women's Day that is coming on Sunday. So I'm just saying we are then continuing on this 7th day of our own bishop who has launched this program. I don't want to take much time. Most of the time that we want to give to our guest, I would therefore like to introduce our guest today, who's going to be talking to us. on this topic, that is the gender-based violence. Our special guest today is Reverend Zukisa Fumba. He is an ordained minister in the Methodist Church of Southern Africa. He is currently serving in the local congregation in Northfield Methodist Church in the Benoni Circuit. Reverend Fumba is an emerging gender activist and the chairperson of the Southern Faith Family Institute and is a board committee member. He is a student of the Master's Theology student in Stellenbosch University. He is also serving as the Highveld and Eswatini Synod Gender Desk convener. So those that are interested in this topic, we are introducing to yourself our own gender desk convener, who is Reverend Fumba, who's going to be talking to us today. I must though say Reverend Fumba is married to Uzandile Fumba, and they've been blessed with 4 beautiful children. Over to you, Mfundisi. We shall listen to you. And Methodist people, you are free, of course, to use that chat box. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mfundisi.
Thank you very much, Sister Lisa. I thank you. You have made my life very easy. I'm not sure whether am I audible enough on your side?
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you so much. I was saying that thank you very much for the opportunity and the fact that you have made my life very easy. Firstly, I want to say that it is such a privilege for me to be asked by our Synod Bishop, Reverend Kwanyana, to participate in this sensitive and also life-giving work, explorative work of attempting to find ways and use the existing resources in the church and in our communities to confront gender-based violence. I am also aware that our synod, HISO Synod, Highveld and Eswatini Synod, comprises of 2 countries, i.e. Eswatini and Highveld, part of South Africa. As you've said earlier on, that we celebrate Women's Month here in South Africa, I thought it is important to note that as we are such a diverse synod, in my privileged time of having a look at Eswatini's way of celebrating women, it came across to my attention that Eswatini's time of celebrating women and also talking about the challenges of the women, it is in March during the International Women's Day when people of Eswatini join the rest of women in the world to celebrate the work of women and also to talk and find ways of attending to the struggles of women at Eswatini. And I thought this is so critical as we begin this conversation, as we celebrate women in our synod, particularly in celebrating the Women's Month here in South Africa. We celebrate not only in South Africa, but we celebrate in understanding that the reality of women in South Africa and the reality of women in Eswatini are no different to one another. They could differ in degrees, but the realities of women in South Africa and Eswatini are very much not different, or rather they are almost the same. Without taking much of the time, but I also want to speak on the context of our conversation as we attempt to confront the gender-based violence. I can add with your grace, Madam Bishop, to say also femicide, gender-based violence, including femicide. That our synod is such, it's one of those diverse synod in the context of our politics, context of social life, society life, the economics, in the context of gender, in the context of government style. We are such a diverse synod at HISWA. I'm saying this as one of the important intersectionalities in our ways of understanding the complexity and the dynamics of gender. That gender, let me just say, let me not take it for granted that we are speaking about the same thing, or rather understanding the same way for all of us who are participants here in this conversation today, as we seek to find ways, or rather to have a conversation on how to confront gender-based violence. When we talk of gender, we are talking about the social construct. It is the way in which how we as humanity understand who female are and males are. In this way, it is a social construction of who a man and who a woman is, as being defined by our understanding of who is a woman and who is a man. As we know that in the understanding of who a man is and a woman is we understand that a woman is the one that the society defines as the weak, the one who's the carer, the one who is emotional. The list is long. We understand the man in the society defined as the one who is strong, the one who is logically, the one who's the protector, the one who's the provider. And friends, I can say safely, and many of us will agree with me, that we live in a world that is recognized in understanding that, you know, men are very strong than women, as I've said earlier on. And you will agree with me in our biblical witnesses that it is a very twisted, it is a very distorted way of understanding humanity. And as a way of attempting to confront gender-based violence, I think we should pause and stand there, you know, to acknowledge how in the social construction of who men and women are, how men and women have been constructed in the society. We know that in the story of creation, God created female and a male in the image of God, equally so. God created males and female equally in his image, bearing the image of God. And unfortunately, over centuries, even to date, that in our cultural and social construction or way of understanding a woman and a man, we have twisted how humanity embodies the image of God. For God created both females and males in his own image. And the church, in its way of embodying God, the church has not helped us in terms of, it has not helped us in terms of the formation of the gender-based violence. The church has for over centuries, with our social cultures, religion and social cultures are the pillars of the formation of gender-based violence. We understand, you agree with me, as people at Eswatini and also here in South Africa, I had a look at the legislation that deals with the violation of women domestically. here in South Africa and in Eswatini, we do have the laws that are enacted, but one understands and sees the lack of the will, or rather even the resources from both governments. I can safely say that in terms of attending and confronting the gender-based violence. And sadly, when one looks into us in church in particular, we have not been an alternative for those who are the victims of gender-based violence in church. And I want to suggest this late part of the afternoon, that if as a church we are to confront in good intention for transformation of all walks of life, if we are as the church, we are to confront gender-based violence, we ought to treat and deem gender violence as an evil. We ought to deem gender-based violence like we have done during the days pre-1994, where in South Africa in particular, the church, religious leaders and community leaders agreed. In particular here in church, we agreed that and declared apartheid as a sin, as evil against humanity. Unless us as the church, in confrontation of gender-based violence, we begin by rejecting and declaring that gender-based violence is not just the so-called normalization of violence, but gender-based violence seeks to undermine our proclamation that God is the one who created us in his own image. And so as the church, before we find all the other forms of practical ways of dealing with gender-based violence, we as the church, we need to declare and reject it, the gender-based violence, as that which seek to undermine God, which seek to undermine humanity. You know, I know that in its own calls for our declaration of faith in very practical ways, that gender-based violence, it is a violation of God. Therefore, we declare it in the same footing as we have declared the violation of Black people in South Africa pre-1994. And gender-based violence, you know, when we look also even in the statistics, I've also checked here even in South Africa, that one of the auditing companies in the few years, KPMG, did a calculation that amounted to about 3% of the GDP in South Africa, which is costing, the cost of gender-based violence has been in the past few years calculated and estimated by KPMG to cost South African government 3% of the GDP. It amounts to 3% of the GDP. Though someone else would say the estimation, or rather the calculation of the cost of gender-based violence could in one way or the other be deemed as undermining or underestimating the pain to the poor. But I was just trying to place into our minds, in our imagination, in ourselves, the impact that gender-based violence has to humanity. And I'm calling to us as the church to declare the gender-based violence as heresy, as we have declared apartheid as heresy. And friends, I know that, I participated in another conference in Stellenbosch earlier in the year. And I shared the progress of the Methodist people in the Southern Africa from 2019 resolution of the conference, where in the explorative attempts of the conference of the Methodist people in Southern Africa to try to redeem the twisted genderedness of women and men, where man has been placed inside the church and outside the church at the unfair privilege, or rather unfair advantage towards women. And this is an indication of the struggle of the people of faith, which is us. You know, that the church had to make a resolution, to make a law, to actually make the people of faith to live out that which we proclaim, you know, to where we are saying that, you know, women and men are all people equally made in the image of God. Therefore, the opportunities to life ought to be equally for both men and women. And so I think it is actually, though one can say it's good news, but it is an embarrassment that a group of faith, which is us, the church, had to be forced by law to be able to embrace humanity in one another. It is actually an embarrassment, though we can see it also outside the church and inside the church, that the perpetrators, as I said earlier on, the perpetrators, or rather, let me say, the victims of gender-based violence, they have been found refuge in the church. You know, we have seen some of the things that are taking place in some of our circuits and societies, whereby those who are the perpetrators of violence are found in the leadership of the church, and are found to be making it impossible for the victims to find refuge in the church. And hence I moved earlier on that one of the very first things that we need to do in confronting gender-based violence, we must declare it as a sin. We must declare it as something that rejects God. And up until we get to that point, we will find instances in our church, sadly, I normally call it the soft patriarchy. Those of us who are men, who proclaim gender equality, who advocate publicly about the equal opportunities into leadership and to different parts of life for women. But when it comes to the implementation of that which we proclaim, when you find some of us who are men, you find that we are against the implementation of creating equal opportunity for women and men. And so up until as the church, we do not beat around the bush when it comes to the real practical hindering factors, when it comes to regendering gender, when it comes to eradicating and stopping gender-based violence, because gender-based violence is not only about the physical nature of it, as much as it is also a physical part of it, where you hear that this partner is being abused by his or her own partner. So the gender-based violence, I would like us in all our attempts of confronting it, not to just focus on the physical side of it, but also to focus on other sides, including economical, including psychologically, you know, whereby one who is a woman Even here in church, I attended another funeral in the recent days in other parts of KZN, whereby I know I come from such context. I watch a local, fully accredited local preacher who was at the gravesite. We were burying there, and the one who was presiding called all the preachers to come at the time of doing the committal and the commendation prayer. And instinctively, the women who were local preachers, fully accredited local preachers, they stayed behind. And friends, I believe that is gender-based violence, that here in church we still continue to allow our social, cultural life that are not giving life to humanity. I am not having any problem with the cultural life because I'm the product of the traditional cultural life. But as the time and the resources of understanding who God is and humanity is in our theologically resources of understanding who is a woman and who is a man, I have also begun to learn that the time is no longer here for men to use the traditional power to abuse women, even in church. And here in church, I believe that we should be the hub of producing men who will stand for women who are abused. We can't be found as the church being the pillars of gender-based violence in the way in which we use our language, in the way in which we speak to one another. We've got to find ways of redeeming our language towards women and young people. I know that some of the people who are using the so-called traditional interpretation of the biblical text, you can go in the First Corinthians, you can go also in the second letter to Timothy, and you can also go to the book of Genesis chapter 1 with the old traditional interpretation of text that seek to suppress women. But I can tell you that the very same text, if we take a time to reread them, we can redeem the text. We can redeem the text as a way of confronting gender-based violence. God who created both women, both females and males. Later on, you find also, as I made reference to such text that, especially the one of submission of women. But if we read it, that chapter 3, verse 1 to verse 7, in attempts of confronting gender-based violence, we will find that text is redeemable. Because that text, when we read it in its completeness, we find that this thing that of submission that suppresses women, it's not existing in that text. Instead, we find in the text both a husband and a wife as co-heirs of the grace of God. And so, friends, all I'm trying to say that in confronting gender-based violence, as people of faith, we have existing resources that we can use, the existing resources that are actually celebrating humanity who is equally made in the image of God. We should also say in platforms like this that the early church fathers and the philosophers like Origen and Aristotle did not help us much when it comes to the gender-based violence. Instead, they have cemented the notion and the ideology that God looks at us in the masculine eyes, not in the feminine eyes. They have not helped us, because they go on to say that for a woman to be a complete human being, she needed to be converted to a man for her to become a human being. And hence I moved earlier on in saying that we as the church, we need to publicly and actively, in the way in which we live life and do church, declare and confess our participation in cementing and constructing the gender-based violence. Let me just give another soft one, and to say that for the households, for many of us in our homes, there is another side that we can use to confront gender-based violence. You know, the manner in which we raise young boys, the manner in which we raise girls can be a resource of confronting gender-based violence. You know, if Bungawe at home falls down and I say, get up, you're a boy, you cannot cry, that is not helping. I believe that we have an opportunity in our household to raise boys to be emotional, to raise boys to learn not to make girls to cry. So the manner in which we raise and form boys and girls at home, I believe that it is an opportunity for us, because those of us who are in the places of religious centers, places like in the church and outside the church, are the products of homes. And we know that we are countries that are Christian driven, both in Eswatini and in South Africa. And the teachings that are coming in our churches ought to be teachings that are seeking to regender, to change the way in which we understand men and women. And so, friends, I know that there is a lot that one can talk about, but I felt that some of the stuff that I've mentioned, I believe that they are so critical for us as the church in particular, and the society in confronting gender-based violence. I know that there are some other ways of partnering, but to partner from the wrong stand view, it will not result in transformational activities of treating women with dignity, of treating girls and children with dignity. And up until us as the church acknowledges our influence in the past many decades and even to date, of how we have maintained patriarchy, of how we have maintained male dominance, the power of men, you know, in society, in churches and outside the churches. It is now the time for us, in particular men, to actually release the privileged power, a power that disadvantages others, a power that disadvantages women. It is a time for us to release that power, because that power is not, in my view, making God good, making God feel good about us, that we suppress others, we suppress women. And for me, I think, without going into details about the practical ways of confronting gender as set out by government, you know, in terms of the institutions that are there for us, we know. But I felt at this part of our conversation about gender-based violence, specifically for the church, we need to take an action. You know, we give the same effort as we have given to apartheid. We as the church, we were true prophets. We had a prophetic voice in the society and to the government. I believe that we still have the same resources if we declare together that gender-based violence is not just any other normalized violence, but it is sin, but it is also heresy. And we join our prophetic voices, to those whom we know even here in the churches, clergy and non-clergy, leaders and non-leaders in the church, to be bold enough in confronting the victims, the perpetrators of the violence. Let the church be the space, be a free space for victims and perpetrators of violence, of gender-based violence, without in any way cheapening the grace, but rather muscling on the accountability for the perpetrators. We know them. And friends, I thought I need just stop right there before taking much of the time. Sister Lisa, let me just pause. I know there's a lot to say, but we don't have much of the time.
Thank you very much, Mfundisi. Siyabulela kakhulu. Thank you very much for getting directly on the issues and what is the Methodist Church doing and what is the church at large doing. Before then, I'm going to give to the people that we have here to be able to lift up their hands and ask questions and probably clarity question if they need to do so. But Mfundisi, when we were talking in the launch with the bishop, one of the things that we're coming out is, are we, even though we are talking, even though we are saying these issues, the church must take them seriously. I'm actually intrigued by what the presiding bishop is saying, that our contribution as the church, of the Methodist Church in this pandemic that she's referring us to as well. Are we really practical? Are we speaking out? Are we able to allow people, irrespective of what position you hold in church, so that then people can be free to raise their own challenges at the particular time? Are we, even us as mothers, able to lend a listening ear, because sometimes, there'll be those issues of saying, no, abantu abadala are saying, if you married nyamezela and all of those. How then, as a church, are we able to take these issues forward? Because I think key is that we need to be able to practicalize it. You've spoken about the boy child, how we are growing them up different from the girl child. How then do we pull all of these things practically, Mfundisi? But I want to open up. I'm asking Mxolisi to please help me if there is any questions on the chat. I can't see any at this moment, but of course, people that could lift their hands, and then if there's any other question, you lift your hand, you open up your mic, you also open up your video, of course. We can start doing that, and Mfundisi Fumba then will be able to answer some of the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think there's a hand before I answer. Now go Doc Nwabe. She has a hand, Doc Nwabe.
Lay leader, you can go on and speak. We note you.
And thanks very much, Chairperson Mfundisi and everyone who's here. Mfundisi ndimvenje kaphezulu indaba soft patriarchy. I wish in terms you can actually go further in terms of unpacking it in relationship to gender-based violence, and then maybe give us some tangible ways of how, maybe one or two as we leave this meeting, of what should we do. Yes, we should declare. Declare is actually saying it, But now in terms of practicality, as we leave this meeting, what is it that you want us to do? 1 or 2 or 3, if there are many, that we can say we heard the talk. Now, as we move out, we are all committing that we are going to be doing 1, 2, 3. Those are the 2 things that maybe I would like you to help me with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. Any other hand, Methodist? Is there any other hand? Let me give to you. We will be monitoring the hands, Rev. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In response, I think my response to Doc Mwabe will be aligned to the question that Siskosa you have made in your comment about what is it that we can do to confront gender-based violence. And I want to align it to my initial major item of saying the starting point. It's not just a declaration in words, but declaration also in our actions. I will make you practical examples. You know, when we talk of gender-based violence here in church, yes, it was you, Dr. Mwabe, talk about soft patriarchy. You know, the consistent unwillingness, yet in proclamation willingness of accepting all people as they are, but yet in practicality, where we have the power, where we have the privileged power to action, we do not action. You know, for example, as I made an example of giving, of rather creating a space for women in church to be who they want to be, and an example of women leadership, intentionally so, as a way of creating opportunities for all people, as particularly, you know, in the Methodist Church, we talk of 40-40-20, the representation of women leadership. And when we talk of soft patriarchy, for me, I always align it to the fact that, you know, it remains very much proclamational. We proclaim it, we say it, you know, we can go and stand in the streets. But when it comes to the local societies, when it comes to the circuits and the connection level, and also in our offices, you find that there is so much hate towards, you know, the equal opportunity for women by men, you know, that you find that we do all that we can to close the opportunity for women to be having the real equal opportunities. That for me is soft patriarchy, that we declare that we are all equal, we are all made in the image of God, but with some of the not so helpful cultural practices that suppress women, you know, we find a way to bring them in church, and even though we reject them publicly, but we continue to embrace them in church. Another example, if we're talking about confronting gender-based violence, you know, the unwillingness of us as people of faith, either at circuit level or society level, of actually dealing with gender-based violence cases, gender-based cases, you know, where it is given and reported that this particular man did this and that, you know, and we find a way to actually not to hold that particular person accountable. That for me, it is a problem, you know, or just because you know that particular person, that man, it is unlike him. You know, it's an embarrassment to the society. You know, you find a way to kill the case, if I can use a loose language. That for me is a practical example of confronting gender-based violence when we are able to actually not to say just because this person is loved so much or actually is related to these particular people who are supposed to be the custodian of discipline, but yet they give a very disgraceful kind of an outcome of discipline. That for me, it is an embarrassment for us as church people, you know, to have a reputation that when people come forward who are victims, whatever form, you know, whether it's sexual, gender-based violence or physical, we know that if it's going to be reported in church, it's going to be dealt in such a way that it's going to die. It's even known that one, it's on Facebook, it's going to die, and it dies. That for me, Dr. Nabe, it is one of the practical ways of actual dealing. Another last one, third one, I can say very much at the Sunday school, you know, very much at Sunday school, you know, in the manner in which we teach children at Sunday school, the Sunday school practitioners, the teachers there should be very much aware of the language they use to the young people whom they're teaching in terms of understanding some of the scriptures that we use and the way how we relay them to the young people. I think it is one of the practical ways of confronting gender-based violence, you know, using the existing biblical also resources, the stories from the Bible, you know, which have been wrongfully interpreted to suppress women, you know, that can be redeemed to correctly resurrect women in those particular texts. So I think I can just stop right there. I hope I've covered the majority of the stuff.
Thank you very much, Rev. I'll just go through the charts. I think I'm seeing one message here that says, thank you, presenter. You have hit the mark. We have to stand out from the rest of the society. The management of the Methodist Church of the Southern Africa should be empowered to directly address issues at hand, especially when you see this happening in our churches. Example you brought up at the funeral you attended. They need to be assisted by having workshops to address these specific issues or best handled as management see fit. I thank you, Stay. And Ranjini Sakeri, that message, Reverend, is from Ranjini Sakeri at Solutions. Thank you very much, Mfundisi. I'm not going to be taking much time. If there are no other hands, if there's no other questions, I am then going to be asking, please, with respect, lay leader, Dr. Ngwabe, to please say our thank yous to Mfundisi Fumba, so that then we can be able to continue and just give to the bishop before we close. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying. Thanks very much. I hope you can see. I'm trying to do my video. I think there's a problem. So I would like to. Then you can. I would like to greet Bishop Unkwanyana uphakathi kwethu, and I would like to greet our Vice Chairperson elect, Reverend Dihluling uphakathi kwethu, no coordinator wethu, Rev Dr. Zabeko, and executive of the Manyandos Esinavu Ekaya, and everybody who has taken the time to be with us today. Reverend Fumba, thanks very much. Yeah, your message is well understood, and we actually heard you. But maybe what I would like to actually also quote, as you are aware that yesterday we received a message from our own presiding bishop in terms of a message for this Women Month, and part of it, which where now you are actually making us more aware. After Tolisa spoke about the first part, she actually said, therefore, it is imperative that we play an active role in fighting this scourge, if we are to be true to our calling as the church. So he's actually saying to us, together with our ecumenical partners, we have declared a gender-based violence as femicide a sin against God in those image all humanity has been created. And we heard you when you said that gender-based violence is an evil sin against humanity, as also the presiding bishop has also said. And we also said, let's reject it and declare it as war. We commit as the synod to also do that. You also made us aware that actually gender-based violence undermines God. And you also challenged us that as the church, we should actually declare it as a heresy. And we should also, while doing that, be aware of the soft patriarchy, because we are equal in front of God. So as people of the synod, we agree with you, and you have given us typical examples of what to do as the church in order to manage gender-based violence. So it is really within us now to together to make our voice audible in terms of using any platform that is there available. We would like to say from the synod management and also from the church as a whole, thank you for giving us some light. What we have actually spoken about is something that it is very serious, and we are not doing enough to actually eradicate it. At some stage, gender-based violence must be eradicated, because as people of God, we are equal in front of each other. Thanks, Polly, for that.
Thank you very much, Lay Leader. Siyabonga kakhulu. Can I then take back and ask the Bishop, Umama Sondlile Nkwanyana, to just remind people again about the program that is taking place next week? Can I then also ask Ngokuzithoba Okukhulu, Vice Bishop of the Hiswa Synod, to please then close this after the Bishop with prayer for us, Reverend Mukhumotsi Dukluleng. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sis Xoliswa. Greetings to everyone in this platform. Thank you, Reverend Fumba. Thank you for this powerful presentation, sir, this afternoon. I think going forward, we need time maybe where you will be helping us how to identify soft patriarchy. Because I think in many years we have been with women who have been walking alongside us, and we thought they are supportive of us, they are with us, we believed them, but at the end you realize that no, this person is not what we thought he is. So I think as the Synod in our programs, we will request you to help us how to identify a soft patriarchy. Sister Xoliswa, coming also in as the steward of the notices. Going forward, we have the people who are leading prayers during the week. Like last week we had prayers from Monday to yesterday. We are also gonna have prayers again from Monday the 9th to the 13th. The people who are leading us this week, this coming week, is Women's Fellowship and Women Auxiliary. They will be working together during the week in terms of prayers. They have forwarded their prayer items. They will be praying for women in leadership, women in parliament, and women in ministry. But I want to add 2 items that I requested that they remain as standing items in our program. The conference that is happening next month and the pandemic that we are living with. So that is the program for this coming week. We will then have our second speaker on Saturday, the 14th, Sisbongi Bayomon. I don't know which one comes first, which is the maiden surname and her husband's surname. Bangomoyo, yes, Bongi Bangomoyo will be addressing us, talking about social media ethics and etiquette. So that will be our second speaker on the 14th of this month. So that's how our program stands so far. We will again give notices going forward after the second speaker to update people how things are gonna be happening. Thank you so much again, Reverend Fumba. Over to you, Sister Olisa.
Thank you very much, Bishop. Masibonge kakhulu, siyabonga again Mfundisi Fumba, siyabonga to the whole team and everybody that has helped us throughout the week and even today. Would just like to say thank you very much. Umsebenzi usaqhubeka. I want then to just quickly hand over to Mfundisi Udi Utluleng okokuba sithandazele and bese usithathela uFefe bese siyahamba ngendawo zethu ezahlukeneyo. Thank you very much.
Kongre rapele Modimo ya halalelang ya mohau ya okametseng dintho tsohle mahodimong le lefatsheng. O re bontshitse tsela ya ho phela ka hore ne ya morwa wa hao Jesu Kriste to be the light, the way, the truth and the model to follow. Empa Modimo wa rona ngenxa yobugwenxa bethu neziphithiphithi zethu sonile samosha inkonzo, samosha umhlaba lo, samosha ubomi. Usixolele bawethu oyingcwele. We lift to you the victims of an abuse meted out against your people, the abuse of power in our homes, churches, society, business.
No more like a date, my daughter. Sister Olisa?
Apologies, I think Umfundisi got cut.
Yes, yes, there was a network problem on his side. Yeah. Not sure whether he's coming back or what. What do you suggest, Bishop, we should do?
May I suggest that if Mfundisi won't be able to come back, may I suggest that Mamu Feni, if she's still around, just close for us with a word of prayer.
No, akekho, Bishop, that's why I asked Reverend, we can also ask Reverend Munama if
Okay, yes, you can request her, ma'am. You can request him. President of OMG, please close for us with a word of prayer, sir.
Thank you, Bishop, and the facilitator. May we please pray? I'm not so sure whether I'm audible.
Yes,
sir.
you are.
Thank you. Let us come before God and pray. Egameni loyise lonyana nelakho moya ongcwele. Thixo oziqu zintathu, ungithixo emunye, mdali wezulu nomhlaba, menzi wezinto zonke. Nkulunkulu wethu, Nkulunkulu wesizukulwana sizayo nesizukulwana sidlulileyo. Emva kwemini, Nkosi yokulunga, sisondela phambi kwakho. Sibonga Nkosi yokulunga imfundiso esiyithole Nkosi yokulunga ngobaba Fumba. Ezama Nkosi yokulunga ukusikhokhela nokusikhumbuza nokucela umngeni Nkosi yokulunga esibhekane nawo. Wokucalucalulana ngobulili. Nokubhebhethekisa Nkosi yokulunga ukuhlukunyezwa nodlame labantu besimame nabantwana esikhathini esiningi oluza ngesandla womuntu wesilisa. Ngenelela ke baba wethu ngakumbi kule nyanga kwelilizwekazi lase South Africa ebekwe bucala yokukhumbula Nkosi yokulunga inxexhepha eyake yabanjwa ngabantu besimame kuzama ukulwisana nokuphikisana nokuhlukunyezwa bawo wethu onamandla amakhulu nokucalucalula ngobulili. Hamba ke nawo wonke ama-sessions Nkosi yokulunga njengaloku nakule session sikuvile Nkosi yokulunga ukhuluma nomuntu wakho edluliswa amazwi Nkosi yokulunga emfundiso. Ngalona mzuzu ke Thixo wethu siyayazi uba kukho abahlukumezwayo, kukho manje Nkosi yokulunga abakuma trauma units and wards abafikayo Nkosi yokulunga njengaloku kuyimpela veki kuyimpela nyanga, being physically abused by Nkosi yokulunga their loved ones. Siyababeka ke Nkosi yokulunga besophisa bexaza igazi kusihla inyembezi, abanye Nkosi yokulunga bakwazi nokubuyela emakhaya bacashile kwindawo ngendawo kuba Nkosi yokulunga ebaleka umuntu ezwana nathandana naye. Abanye Nkosi yokulunga bajeqwa indlala. Bathi Nkosi yokulunga abantu besilisa abangama breadwinners who are supposed to take care and look after them Nkosi yokulunga and to provide. Bekhale Nkosi yokulunga ukuthi imali ayikho, abantwana bekhule kalusizi. Baba wethu onamandla amakhulu, sisondeza ke izimo enjalo. Sikhulekela Nkosi yokulunga ukuba ungene uhlisa ulaka Nkosi yokulunga uphebeze yonke imimoya yokuhlukubezana. Sihlalisane kahle ndawonye uNkulunkulu wethu onomusa kangaka. Sikelela ke Nkosi yokulunga ubaba Fumba nomsebenzi omphathise wona kwesisithili. Sikelela Nkosi yokulunga inhloko yesisithili nawo wonke umuntu othe Nkosi yokulunga wabamba iqhaza. Baba wethu onamandla amakhulu sisondeza bonke Nkosi yokulunga abantu besimame ngalesikhathi kwindawo ngendawo kuyikona ngekona kumazwe ngamazwe Nkosi yokulunga abaphansi kwencindezelo enkulu Nkosi yokulunga yolaka abahlangabezana nabalitholayo Nkosi yokulunga ngokunganikezwa inhlonipho ngokungabonwa njengabantu nokuthi esigabeni noba sebekhulile Nkosi yokulunga banganikezwa ithuba. Simisa wena ke uNkulunkulu wethu siyakhuleka baba egameni lenkosi yethu nguJesu Kristu. Uthe wena Nkosi yokulunga masicela uyawusenzela konke Nkosi yokulunga esikucelayo xa sikhuleka kuwe ngokholo. Thixo wethu nangesicela nangokuzehlisa uthe Nkosi yokulunga masize kuwe Nkosi yokulunga sisabele sosimemo Thixo wethu sokuza kuwe sokuthatha lakho ijokhwe sikunike lethu Nkosi yokulunga kube lakho lilungile limnene lilula. Bawo wethu onamandla amakhulu ngena yihle wenkosi yethu nguJesu Kristu yenze imimangaliso empilweni zethu ukuguqula Nkosi yokulunga imindset ukuthi thina abantu besilisa Thixo wethu ukuthi thina singama abusers and perpetrators ngalomzuzu sikhulekela Nkosi yokulunga ubukhona bakho simangalise Nkosi yokulunga mayingathi le session Nkosi yokulunga ingafiki kwindawo ekumele ifike kuyo zongavumi Nkosi yokulunga sowuvala umlomo wethu yenza kwindawo esima kuzo Nkosi yokulunga sokuhlala nezokukhonza nezokusebenza Nkosi yokulunga simane sikhuzana sinqanda siphakamisa udumo lakho sikhulekela Nkosi yokulunga inhlonipho komnye nomunye. Siyakunxusa ke Nkosi yokulunga sewungavumi ongendawo Nkosi yokulunga zingomba isifuba solathe ngeminwe athi ke xa kunje banoThixo phina yihla moya ongcwele ungene ngaphakathi Thixo wethu nezo zimo ezithi xa zibhekwa noxa Nkosi yokulunga bemile abantu besimame kuma social workers nakuma counselors kumane ukuthi wabekezela noxa beyawuvula ama cases ukuthi wabuyelana ekhaya nawuxoxa ubekezele kwanele Nkosi yokulunga ukutheni kubekezela umuntu oyedwa ngaso sonke isikhathi kungathiwa nalomunye Nkosi yokulunga akabekezele yihla ke Nkosi yokulunga masazi Nkosi yokulunga ukuba siyafanana siyalingana phambi kwakho mdali wezulu nomhlaba akho umuntu okumele avuse isikhwepha abonakalisa amandla ngaphezu komnye. UNkulunkulu wethu ze ungathuli ngosizi lwethu nangokuhlupheka kwethu ngesikhathi sikukhonza ngaso simangalise Nkosi yokulunga sisicela ke zonke Nkosi yokulunga lezi zinto sithi lo mthandazo mawufike Nkosi yokulunga kumakhaya namakhayana bawo wethu onamandla amakhulu ungene wena wenze imimangaliso kuthi Nkosi yokulunga ungawungena Nkosi yokulunga labo lungekho khona uxolo kuthi ngale session Nkosi yokulunga yanamhlanje kubonakala kushintsha isimo nezimo zonke ezikhona kwindawo ngendawo. UNkulunkulu wethu siyakucela sibambele Nkosi yokulunga sibambele mdali wezulu nomhlaba nguwe wedwa onamandla wokubhreka Nkosi yokulunga ulaka nguwe wedwa Thixo wethu wokubamba Nkosi yokulunga ulaka nokuhluthuka ukubamba ienga mdali wezulu nomhlaba Thixo wethu nemasculinity Nkosi yokulunga itoxic kubantwana bakho yihla ke manje moya ongcwele kababa uNkulunkulu ungena usiphefumulele Thixo wethu ngawo umoya wakho ongcwele sizicela zonke lezi zinto sizinxusa sisazi sibonga Nkosi yokulungela ilinge namalinge wonke azayo nadlulileyo mdali wezulu nomhlaba siyazi isimo asinawuhlala sinje. Thixo wethu onamandla amakhulu, phinda uthathe indawo empilweni zethu, phinda uthathe indawo kwilizwe Nkosi yokulunga nakubantu obadalileyo. Bawo wethu onamandla amakhulu, sisicela zonke lezi zinto, sibonga sisazi ukuthi ususenzele wena ngayo lo wafu wavuka ehlele elawula kunye nawo nomoya ongcwele ngoku ngonaphakade. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
We can make a grace for us, Mfundisi, please, and then we can leave.
And now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit abide with us all, now and forevermore. Amen.
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 Thank you very much, Mr. Lela.